L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Austerity and cuts are exactly what Canadian families are living today. 7 million of them are cutting meals because they can't afford food prices after he's inflated them. And many are cutting homes and forced to live in tents because mortgage rates have risen so fast under this Prime Minister's deficit. Scotiabank now calculates government deficits are adding 2 full percentage points to the rates. That's $700 per month in higher mortgage payments. Next year, $900 billion, the next 3 years, $900 billion of new mortgages, or 2/3 will come up for renewal. We risk a massive default crisis. Will the Prime Minister announce a plan to balance the budget to bring down mortgage rates so Canadians can keep their homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen this movie before. The Conservative politician's approach to facing challenges is always cuts and austerity. He recognizes, like we all do, that Canadians are facing difficult times, and his solution is for the federal government to do less, to invest less in Canadians, to be there less to support Canadians. That is not what we're going to do, Mr. Speaker. Over the past number of months, we've announced the construction of over 100,000, 200,000 homes across the country. We're delivering support for people in buying groceries with greater competition, and we're moving forward with clean jobs into the future, whether it's manufacturing with Stellantis or Volkswagen, whether it's resources. We're moving forward to support workers.
Hear, hear.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
What we're proposing is for the government, the federal government, to do less damage and cost less money so that Canadians don't have to live in austerity and cuts like they are today. Today we found out that rent rose faster in October than in any month in 40 years. The Prime Minister's solution to that? Quadruple the carbon tax. Quadruple the carbon tax? Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister announce in an hour in his fall economic statement that he's gotten a little bit of common sense, that he's going to cancel the quadrupling and cap the tax until the carbon tax election, when I will win and axe the tax all?
Mr. Speaker, our solution to Canadians who are having trouble affording housing is to build more housing, is to invest in working with municipalities to unlock more homes built, to bring down rents. These are the investments we're making. But, Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that the Leader of the Opposition talks about the damage we're doing to Canada by delivering $10 a day childcare, the damage we're doing to Canada by delivering dental care to kids who can't afford it, the damage we're doing to Canada by continuing to step up for seniors by protecting their pensions. If that's damage, then we really see what the Conservative leader is made of.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Last year, the Finance Minister promised to balance the budget in her False Hopes update, then did a massive flip-flop and promised to balance the budget in the year never. The Prime Minister did a massive flip-flop recently, too, on his carbon tax scam, where he gave a temporary carve-out for Canadians in Atlantic Canada. That's 3% of Canadians, whereas poll numbers were tanking. After 8 years, this Liberal NDP government are not worth the cost, and they still plan on quadrupling it. Why don't they pause quadrupling the carbon tax in today's failing economic update and call a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable colleague often neglects to mention a whole range of important facts. The price on pollution is an important component of a broad approach to fighting climate change. It is done in a manner that addresses affordability concerns. 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back than they pay. With respect to home heating oil, it is a specific case. We are focused on ensuring we're doing it in a manner that will help us to drive the fight against climate change while ensuring affordability for Canadians. It is a responsible and thoughtful approach to public policy, something that we never hear from the Conservatives.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Canada's best climate change plan is going to be a change in government under the common sense Conservative leader as Prime Minister. 2 million Canadians going to a food bank in a single month. 1 in 5 are skipping meals, food inflation out of control, failed woke policies like the carbon tax are driving up the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating, while these Liberal NDP government continue to miss every single climate change target that they set for themselves, and Canadians get less in these phony rebates. And they still plan on quadrupling it. So why don't they put the pause on quadrupling the carbon tax and go to election so Canadians can decide on the carbon tax themselves?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think on this side, and actually for Canadians across this country, but particularly in Ontario, when we hear the words common sense and conservatives, we get the shivers, because we remember the time when they cut services to education, when they cut services to healthcare, when they cut important services for water that led to deaths in Walkerton, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we hear common sense conservatives, we know that means cuts for Canadians, harms to Canadians, and nothing good comes of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, grocery and home heating bills continue to rise, as do rent and mortgage payments. Scotiabank has said that inflationary government deficits are to blame. If our deficit maker-in-chief was to show fiscal responsibility, it would drop interest rates by 2% and save the average family $700 a month off their mortgage. Does the Prime Minister understand that his deficits are making it difficult for people to afford basic necessities like food and housing? Or does he think that all Canadians are auditioning for Les Mis?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind the member opposite and perhaps inform the House that this morning Statistics Canada indicated that inflation has dropped yet again in this country. It is now at 3.1%. Mr. Speaker, Canada continues to have the lowest deficit among all G7 countries, and with respect to the report that my honourable colleague cites, that report indicates that it is actually provincial spending, not federal, and COVID supports that are the result of the statistics that he's citing, Mr. Speaker. The facts are important.
The Honourable Member from Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, if we all quiet down, you can already hear the fiscal engines in the background starting to rev up, as the only solution for inflationary spending for this Prime Minister is more inflationary spending. The Conservative leader has challenged the Prime Minister to stop his carbon tax hikes, reduce his deficits, and build homes, not bureaucracy. Will they address these issues in their mini-budget today, or will they reject this common sense plan and show that the only thing that isn't subject to rising inflation in Canada is the competence of this NDP Liberal government?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister stated just a few moments ago, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance will be tabling the fall economic statement at 4 p.m. in this House. All members, including the member opposite, will have a chance to look at all of the numbers, and we will have a chance in this House to debate the economic plan that our government has put forward, Mr. Speaker. I would remind the member opposite, when he talks of deficit, that Canada continues to have the lowest deficit among all G7 countries, and we will continue to be fiscally responsible.
Good job.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of inflationary Liberal spending, this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost for Quebecers. Quebec's October inflation was still the worst in Canada at 4.2%. Scotiabank experts have calculated that government overspending has added 2% to interest rates in Canada. That's $700 a month more for mortgages. Will the Liberal Prime Minister announce a plan today to balance the budget in today's mini-budget so that interest rates can come down and Canadians and Quebecers can keep their homes? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, the fall economic update will be tabled at 4 in a very short time, and then our honourable colleague will be able to look at the numbers. But I can confirm immediately that Canada will continue to have the lowest deficit in the G7, and we will continue to be fiscally responsible.
L'honorable député de Mégantic-l'Érable.
The honourable member. Well, according to the data we've seen, rent prices have risen by more than 9% in Quebec over the past year. In the Journal de Montréal, we read about a 30-year-old man who was preparing to spend his first winter on the street with nowhere to call home. After 8 years of inflationary Liberal spending, it's hard to understand why the Bloc Québécois wants 2 more years of this and also to radically increase the carbon tax. The Bloc Québécois wants the balance of power, not a balanced budget. Does the Prime Minister have the Bloc say so to continue irresponsibly spending billions of dollars? Or will he finally listen to Conservative common sense and balance the budget?
L'honorable ministre des Transports.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are telling us that they care about Canadians, but they don't seem to give a fig about what's happening. They don't seem to care about the flooding, the heavy rains, the wildfires everywhere. They don't seem to care at all. They want to cut money to fight climate change. They want to make us back up and keep backing up with cuts and austerity, but we will not be dragged back into the Stone Age.